Sometimes you hear that group of people with whom you get together at church referred to as a church family. And that idea or that phrase isn't exactly found in the Bible, but it's a biblical concept. For example, in the book of Galatians, there's a verse that goes like this: "Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers." The family of believers. That language is exactly what we translate into church family as we talk about things. And unfortunately, just as the word family can be a bad word to people who have had bad or difficult or complex experiences with their families, so also the idea of the family of believers or your church family can be kind of a bad word. Here's a few examples. First of all, there was one particular group of Christians who would get together to celebrate the Lord's Supper with the bread and the wine, and the problem they ran into was some of the people were so greedy and foolish about it that they would drink up all the wine and they would get drunk on it, and some of the other people wouldn't get any at all, right? A family of believers. There's another one. There's a church family in the New Testament, and inside of that church, that group of believers is an actual mother and son who are actually biologically related, and they are having an actual affair with each other, and the family of believers aren't doing anything about it. A family of believers? At another point in the New Testament, the Gentile believers in Jerusalem have to go and talk to the leadership of the church because the widows who are Gentiles, that means the ones who aren't Jews, aren't getting any of the aid or assistance that the widows who are Jewish are receiving. They're literally neglecting some of their widows, some of these people in the church who need actual help. A family of believers? Here's one from the Old Testament. There was a priest, right? And he had a couple of sons, and they all worked in the temple. And those sons would actually go and they would take meat from the offerings, from the sacrifices that were brought, and hurt people's consciences in doing that. But then they would also sleep with, and for all considerations, force the women who were working at the temple to sleep with them. And all of this was happening with the knowledge of the priest who was their father. A family of believers. And this might be the worst of them all. There was a rabbi who was very well respected who actually was betrayed by the other teachers of the law. They paid for him to be betrayed, and then they manipulated crowds into working against him so that he would be actually murdered. Some of the teachers of God's word did this to another teacher of God's word. A family of believers. All this is to say that the family of believers is imperfect, and as a result, it might have at some point left you betrayed or hurt or with a bad taste in your mouth, and I understand that. But Jesus came and became an actual part of the family of believers, one of the ones who walked each day believing in what God said, so that there would be one great part, one perfect part of this family, of the church family. And Jesus died so that we and our church families can have a never-ending string of second chances to learn what it looks like to really, truly, deeply, and in a godly way love one another. And remember that when church families hurt. Remember that when church families are dysfunctional. And remember these words from Hebrews chapter 2. Both the one who makes people holy, that's Jesus, and those who are made holy, that's us, are in the same family. So Jesus is not ashamed to call them brothers and sisters, a family of believers.